Sangham Sharanam Gacchami. Buddham Sharanam Gacchami. Dhammam Sharanam Gacchami. Sangham Sharanam Gacchami. Buddham Sharanam Gacchami. Dhammam Sharanam Gacchami. Sangham Sharanam Gacchami. Buddham Sharanam Gacchami. Dhammam Sharanam Gacchami. Sangham Sharanam Gacchami. Buddham Sharanam Gacchami. Dhammam Sharanam Gacchami. Sangham Sharanam Gacchami. Buddham Sharanam Gacchami. Dhammam Sharanam Gacchami. Sangham Sharanam Gacchami.
Dumba Jumden de Java da Jumba Yandava Zobe Sanje Riwa Dan Jazu Demba Dewara Shiva Jigden Jemba Jebu Dube Kalu Jurwa Lana Meva Lada Menam Je Dumba Sanje Jumden de Pejava Shaja Tuba Na Chazel Judo Jazu Je Wo Dumba Jumden de Jen Shiva Tajumba Yandava Zobe Sanje Riwa Dan Jabzu Demba Dewara Sheba Jigden Jemba Jebu Dube Kalu Jurva Lana Meva Lada menam je domba sanje jomden de penjawa shaja toba la chanze lo chodo jazo je wo domba jomden de jen shewa chajomba yandaba zobe sanje rigba dan jabzo demba dewara sheba jekden jemba jebo ndube kalo gyorba Lana meba lada menanje domba sanje jumden de penjawa shaja tuba la chanze lo chudo jazo je wo sanje chudan soje chonama la chanju bando tane jamzo che Tage chöche jebe sonama je dola penje sanje dobara sho sanje chodan soje chonama la Jangju bado dane jabzo je Tage chöche jebe sonama je dola penje sanje dobara sho sanje chodan soje chonama la Changju pado tane gyalso je. Dage cheche jebe sonamanje dola penje sanje dobara shos. Good morning. I can see from my window that it's a very pleasant day. I hope you have been enjoying the final weeks before the winter begins. While enjoying the days, I also hope that you haven't forgotten the practices, to be conscientious about our actions of the three doors. While we enjoy the life, while we enjoy the samsara, or let me rephrase, we can do both. We can enjoy the samsaric life, but at the same time, we can also practice. So one good thing about Buddhism is that we can practice Dharma all the time, whether we are at work or at home, whether we are walking or engaging in all kinds of activities, we can still practice. So that's the good part. We don't need to sit down for hours in our prayer rooms. We don't need to recite prayers for hours and hours. First of all, it is all about motivation. And then it boils down to transforming our mind, taming our mind. It is all about conforming our actions of physical and verbal to Dharma, to virtuous one. So that one we can do anytime, all the time, everywhere. So most important is to apply the mindfulness and then what is called the meta-awareness or the introspection or the vigilance. For most of us, we lack mindfulness. Even when we have mindfulness, we fail to adopt this introspection. Most of us, every day, we forget to be virtuous in our activity. We don't even remember to restrain from non-virtue. We forget to set our mind to spend the day in a virtuous way. And then throughout the day, we fail to check our actions, what our mind is thinking, what our body actions or what our speech, what kind of karma our speech is committing, what kind of physical actions our body is committing. We fail to do that. So as long as we are able to watch our mind, then it is possible that our actions, both physical and verbal, or even the mental actions, will conform to Dharma. So the one reason why we have difficulty to do that or to fulfill that is because we do not have the ability called the serviceability, where we can put our body and mind to any action that we wish. So that can be achieved, that can be accomplished when we achieve what is called pliancy. So in order to achieve that, we need to go through a particular mental training, so which is the training in Shamatha. So that's what we are trying to understand. So in the last class, from the three headings, three topics, the relying on the preconditions for Shamatha, how to cultivate Shamatha on that basis, the measure of successful cultivation, we have touched on the relying on the preconditions for Shamatha. We have discussed that. And then now we are on to how to cultivate Shamatha on that basis. So that one, we talked about mainly the 8 antidotes and the 5-fold. The importance of identifying the faults, the obstacles. Upon identifying the obstacles, then we need to apply appropriate antidotes. So here we have 5 faults or 5 obstacles, and then its corresponding antidotes, 8 of them, which we have discussed in the last session. So now we are here. So through this the 8 antidotes. When we apply these antidotes in order to counter the 5 faults, we will go through a kind of a developmental stages before we achieve Shamatha. So there are 9 stages. At each stage we make, or I think we make a milestone. We make a milestone achievement. Am I right? We make a milestone at each stage. Each stage. So what are the 9? I think most of you are familiar. You have listened to these teachings before, and you have heard these teachings from those teachers who taught from their own experience. So this kind of teachings, it is best if a teacher can teach from their own experience. But sadly, I do not have any experience. I haven't achieved this. So what I am just discussing here today is more of parroting what I have read, what I have studied. It's not from my own experience. So in that sense, you are unfortunate to be stuck with me. Anyway, let's try to decipher each of these 9 stages, and then we can see whether we can make any sense of this, and we can also gauge our own level. After going through all these stages, you can gauge yourself. You can tell that at which stage you are now. Maybe some are already 5th, 6th, and maybe many of us, like me, we may find that we are still at the number 1. So let's find out. So the 9 stages are mental. The first one is called mental placement. So this one, I think you have seen this drawing, this illustration. This is a common drawing that we see in many walls of many monasteries. So this is not just a drawing, it has its own meaning. So here you see I have numbered each one. So each stage, each elephant, where the elephant is, represents each stage. So what are these things? Here you have a elephant, you have a monkey, you have a rabbit, you have a fire, and all this. What do these represent? What is the significance of this? So the first, the elephant, which at the initial stage, it is completely black. And then later, it transforms. The blackness diminishes at each stage and eventually the elephant becomes white. So the elephant in this drawing represents our mind that is thickly covered or thickly associated or hindered by the two obstacles, laxity and excitation. So through the application of the antidotes, eventually our mind frees itself from these two hindrances, the laxity and excitation. Our mind can eventually become free of these two obstacles. Our mind can achieve the ability to really rest on an object without any distraction, without any laxity. So the elephant represents our mind, untamed mind. And then you have the black color, degree of laxity. You see, the higher the stages the elephant arrives, the less degree of blackness, the black color. And then we have somewhere, we have also a monkey. Monkey represents mind wandering or the excitation. You see that in the early stage, the monkey goes in the front, and later it follows the practitioner. So at the initial stage, you can see that the elephant is fully black, and then the monkey, which represents the excitation, the mind wandering. This shows that mind wandering is so strong. The practitioner has no control over the mind, the mind wandering, or the what is called the mental scattering. So I think it is easier if I give an example. Maybe that illustration will help. So imagine like this. So if you have those Christmas lights, which really flickers, and then imagine you have the main bulb here. All these are the source of the power. You have a battery there. So depending on the number of those small bulbs using the power, that the main bulb, it also affects the brightness of the main bulb. So when we are at the initial stage, when you turn it on, when everything is lighted, imagine that. So all those small bulbs, the Christmas lights, are flickering, and then because all are in, the center bulb is one, sometimes it's coming on, sometimes it's not bright. It's like this. So that's the first stage. All the other small Christmas bulbs are like the mind wandering, mind scattering, thinking of all kinds of things. And because everything is lighted, the main bulb where we're supposed to focus, it is not lighted strongly. It is not bright enough. And then when you started to switch off one by one, maybe certain number of smaller bulbs at one time, if we turn it off, then the flickering will be lessened, diminished, and then because the less consumption of power by the other small bulbs, the main bulb lights brighter. So that's what happens. When you arrive at the final stage, it is like you have successfully turned off the rest of the lights, those small lights. And because of that, the center bulb is now fully lit. So that's when you have arrived at the ninth stage. So keep that in mind. Maybe that will help you to understand better. So then we have the monkey. Okay, then we have the monkey, the black color monkey degree of excitation. So you can see that after a while, the monkey is cleaned of its black color. The white patch, you can see that as it progresses on the path, on the stages, the white patch started to appear. So this represents the mental clarity and stability. Remember, in Shamatha, you are trying to achieve two things: mental clarity and stability. Sometimes we have clarity, but there's no stability. It will be very brief. You have a very clear, the image. You are able to apprehend a very clear image of the object of meditation, but it does not last long. So in such cases, there is no stability. Sometimes we are able to focus or rest our mind on the object, but it's very vague. You see something bulky there, something dark or something yellowish there, but you don't really have a clear image. We need to have both clarity as well as stability. So the more white it becomes, it suggests that the clarity and stability has increased. And then you see that somewhere around the path, a black rabbit appeared. So that's subtle laxity. At the initial stage, the laxity, the gross laxity is more prominent. And then later, when we are able to counter the gross laxity, then the subtle laxity becomes prominent. Then in the hand of the practitioner, there is a noose. So that represents mindfulness. Here, the mindfulness and vigilance are the main, or there are three main three, the power. The power of mindfulness, the power of vigilance, and the power of diligence or the perseverance. So noose represents the mindfulness, the power of mindfulness. Hook represents the vigilance. Remember, we discussed how wild elephants are trained using that hook. And then you see that the intensity of fire, at some stages there is fire, but other stages there is no fire. So this represents that some stages you need to exert diligence, whereas other stages you don't need to. And even the size of the fire represents the degree of effort or force we need to apply. So just from this, we can have a rough idea of the 9 stages. So now let's go through one by one. Then there is something called the power of the forces. The 9 stages and the corresponding 6 forces of powers. In this one, there are 6 powers. In Tibetan called top tuk. So top tuk are the antidotes. In order to, at each stage, one needs to apply a particular power. So there are 6 of them. So that the first stage, the force of hearing or force of listening, is basically that you hear the instructions. When you start your initial meditation, you are relying on the instructions that you have received. So nowadays, of course, you can go online, you can read books. In olden days, it is really the teacher giving the instruction directly. So the teacher will give the instructions, okay, you do this, and then the student will do. And then once the student has finished or arrived or completed that stage, then the next instruction is given. But now, with the advent of technology, everything is available at our fingertips. So we don't need kind of a direct personal instruction. So the first is you rely completely on the teacher's instruction. So that's why it says force of hearing or listening. And then from the second continuous placement is then whatever instructions you have given. So you reflect on it, you remember the instruction, and then you continue doing the meditation. So that's why it is achieved through the force of reflection. And then when you reach third and fourth, that's when you really need to be mindful, because the distraction, the excitation is very prominent at that stage. So your main force or the countering force is mindfulness. So through mindfulness, you progress through the first to the first 3 and the stage 3 and 4. So that's why that stage, the 2 stage, is achieved through the force of mindfulness. And then at the 5th and 6th, then force of introspection. And then 7 and 8, force of perseverance or the diligence. And then finally the force of acquaintance, the familiarity. Anyway, yeah, we will go through it. We will repeat this. Then there is something called the 4 attentions. So these, because of their stage and prominent effort, one needs to apply it at a particular stages. So they are categorized into 4 attentions. Like the first 2 is called tight focus, because that's where your mind wanders all the time. That's where you really need to exert effort. You have to be very, very careful. So it's called tight focus. And then the following 5 are categorized as intermittent focus. So during these stages, so you, because of the laxity and excitation, there is always interruption. You are unable to continue focusing on the object. There are times where you are overpowered by laxity or your mind wanders. So because of that, these 5 stages are categorized as intermittent focus, because your focus is interrupted. There is no continuity. And then when you arrive at the one-pointed attention, the number 8, that is stage 8, there the laxity and excitation cannot affect you. They cannot cause any damage or harm in your concentration. So that's why it's called uninterrupted focus. And then finally, you don't even need to exert effort. It comes effortlessly. So that attention or concentration is called the spontaneous focus. So these are the 4 attentions. Now let's dive into each stage. So the first is called the mental placements. That's when we really start to meditate. So you decide to, okay, I am going to develop shamatha. So now you have already consulted with your teacher, you have received your instructions, so now you start doing your meditation. So this is the first stage. This entails thoroughly withdrawing your attention from all outside objects and directing it inwardly to the object of meditation. So you choose the object of meditation. It could be either the Buddha's image, or it could be a flower or chair, whatever you decide as your object of meditation. So in this, of course, we know that when we do meditation, we are trying to bring our mind inward. We're trying to withdraw our attention. We're trying to cut off all the external attractions, distractions. So this is what we do. That's when we do the mindfulness meditation. We try to bring our mind onto the object of meditation. So this is at this stage, of course, we cannot continue resting our mind on the object that long. For some people, it's like few seconds. But sometimes, because this is the initial stage, we feel that we are able to focus on the object quite a bit, but it's not true because we haven't realized, we are unaware of our mind wandering, even though our mind has already wandered off the topic of the object, but we are unaware of it. We didn't realize. That's why we think that we are doing a fantastic meditation, but it is not. So this, as mentioned before, so this one is relied on the instructions that you have heard from your teacher, or in today's world, maybe you read about it from the book. So now you're trying to do that. So it is the force here is amongst the 6 forces, it is achieved through the force of hearing. So after doing that, after trying that for a while, then we progress to the second stage. This is called continued placement, as the name suggests. In the first one, it's very, very brief. Our attention is very short-lived. But now we are able to stay on the object a bit longer. And this is the stage where we feel that our conceptions have increased. We call it namtok. Sometimes we feel that instead of making progress in the meditation, we feel that we are actually, what is the other word? We are getting worse. We are not getting better, because this is where you realize that your mind wanders all the time. So you see, your attention that was initially directed to the object of meditation does not stay elsewhere, but is continuously set upon the object of meditation. So in the first session, the first stage, is our focus is very short-lived. And now we are able to remain on the object a bit longer. So this is where we become very conscious of our mind is doing. So it's not really that we have kind of a digress into our meditation. Actually, this is an improvement. So the analogy given in the text is like when you go to one of the main road, let's say it's a popular gathering, like a main street, where there's a lot of traffic, a lot of people walking up and down. So normally when you are not really giving much attention, you don't really notice. You notice the sheer amount of people trafficking or people walking on that road. If you go there and try to count how many people are walking up and down that road, then you will be surprised that so many people walk on that road. So people have been that the same number of people have been walking in the past, but because we haven't given much attention to it, we don't notice. So likewise here, now that we have tried to withdraw our mind, we try to rest our mind on the chosen object, we see that our mind jumps off that object, and we see that it's happening very frequently. And then it makes us think that, oh, there's a lot more. My conceptions have increased. My mind wandering has increased. It's not the case. Actually, it's a sign of progress, sign of improvement, that we have become more conscious, more aware of our mind. So this is achieved through the force of reflection, as a consequence of the practice of repeated reflecting on the continuation of the initial fixation of attention upon the object of meditation. So you have already heard the instructions. Now you are just using that. You are just contemplating on the existing instructions. So that's why it says this is achieved through the force of reflection. So the difference between the first stage and second stage is the duration. So they have given tests. Something, if I remember correctly, I may be mistaken. So if we are able to focus our mind on the object. Let's say if we recite Om Mani Padme Hum, and if we are able to recite one full round of mala without distraction, then that is the measure that we have achieved the second one, the continuous placement. So what do you think? Do you think that you are on this stage? So the first stage is really like the, have you seen those pandas? Sometimes we see on the social media the panda clips, and the caretaker, they try to, what do you call, stop them from all this, causing this, what do you call, the destruction. They're supposed to, they're not supposed to climb on that tree, and they're climbing, and you put it on one side, and then they will do something else. It's like the toddlers. If you are a baby sitter, I think you all know, I mean, you have your experience. When the infant is already a toddler, and if they can crawl, so you put the baby in this, and then when you are a little bit distracted, it's gone. It's doing elsewhere. So that's the initial stage. But the second stage, when you are able to, when they are able to really sit for a while. So these first two, because at these first two stages, we are overwhelmed by the excitation and the laxity, we really need to exert effort. So that's why it's called the tight focus. These first two are categorized as the tight focus. So now what happens? Patch placement. This is the third stage. If your attention is drawn away by forgetfulness and distracted outward, you recognize this and again fix it upon the object of meditation. So now this is where the mindfulness comes in. So the main work is done by mindfulness. So at this stage, even though there is excitation, your mind wanders. But what happens is, because of the mindfulness, you are able to recognize, you are able to become aware of your mind wandering. And because of the force of mindfulness, you bring back your mind back to the object of focus. So that's why it's called patched placement. So there are patches, there are gaps in which your mind has wandered. So there's a gap when you are unable to remain focused on the object. So when you bring back, it's like patching that gap. So when we are able to do that, that's the third stage. So now what is the difference? What is the difference between what is the milestone here? What is the milestone here? What is the difference between the third and the second stage? So the primary difference is the length of time you remain distracted. At the second stage, your mind is distracted, but you remain distracted longer because you don't have this force of mindfulness. you don't realize that your mind has distracted. You forget that you have to be very mindful not to lose the object. So at the second stage, yeah, so the distraction, the duration of the distraction is longer. But here on the third stage, the moment mind distracts because of the power of mindfulness, you are able to bring back your mind. So the duration of distraction is much less compared to the second stage. Fourth stage. As the force of mindfulness develops, forgetfulness does not create outward distraction. So here, again, we rely heavily on the force of mindfulness. And actually, this is the stage where we have fully developed the power of mindfulness. So because of the power of mindfulness, so we hardly lose. We hardly lose. So this is the stage. The milestone here is that we will not, from this onward, this stage onward, we will not completely lose the focus. So the excitation, there will be subtle excitation, but we will never completely lose the focus. Our mind will remain focused there. Of course, at the site they will be, remember when we talk about the subtle excitation, even though you have the object, the focus object, although your mind is focused on the object, but at the site, some distraction arises. I think from our own experience, we can tell that we're focused there, but something is happening at the peripheral, what do you call, at the site. So this is where you will never lose, never completely lose the object of your mind, object of your attention. So this is good. If we have arrived, if we are able to achieve this one, it's such a big, such a huge achievement. So now, what is the difference between the first three stages and this? Is that the first time you never completely lose your object of meditation. So now what happened is, so now you have really, in the first four stages, we have really focused on withdrawing our mind from external objects. We really try to bring our mind in or onto the object. We try to make the object subtler. What happens is when we do that, when we do overly withdrawing of our mind from the external objects, then the laxity arises. So laxity is the obstacle here. So we don't have to worry too much of the excitation, but laxity, because you have really tried to draw your mind in. So now what you need to do is, we need to, when we sink into laxity, we need to uplift our mind. in order to do that, we need to reflect. That's why it's reflecting upon the advantages of concentration. You take delight in concentration. Because of the laxity, our mind has sunk in bit low. So because of that, there is no strength. Even though we have the the object there, but it's not clear. And even if there's clarity is there, but there is no strength when it apprehends. There's no strong grief over the object of meditation. So in such cases, in this stage, so you reflect on the benefits, the merits, and that will boost our enthusiasm. That will uplift us, and then we are able to counter that laxity. So here, in order to become aware of whether this laxity is happening or not, because laxity can be very tricky, very deceiving, especially the subtle laxity. Sometimes people mistook it as shamatha. So we need to apply the force of introspection. We have to vigilantly, diligently monitor whether that subtle laxity is occurring or not. So when this is happening, when we realize that this is happening, so in order to counter that, we reflect, we contemplate on the merits of concentration in general and specifically the benefits of shamatha. And then of course we can also contemplate on the the precious human rebirth and the qualities of the three jewels. These are all to help us uplift from that that sunken into that laxity. So that's why it's called taming Durchavas. So here the difference between the fourth and the fifth is that so at the stage fourth, the gross laxity still arises. But on this stage, there is no room for gross laxity. But of course, there is this danger of subtle laxity. So that's the difference, whether the occurrence of gross laxity and excitation. On this stage, there is no such occurrence, but in the previous one, the stage, the fourth stage, this happens. Regarding distraction as a fault. So now what happened is, so now you have tried to brighten yourself. You contemplated on the advantages of shamatha so that it can uplift us, so that we will recover from the subtle laxity. What happens when we do that? There is a kind of a consequences. Shall I say side effect? Side effect is that we get more excited. The excitation arises. So here, regarding distraction as a fault, you quell any dislike for concentration. So force of inspiration, what vigilance you recognize the fault of being scattered. So here, again, we rely on the force of introspection. And now you watch out for excitation. So when you realize that excitation is occurring, arising, of course, we are talking about the subtle excitation. So then we counter that by meditating on the impermanence nature of things. And also we call that the Medukpa, the meditation on the ugliness, because this is all because of attachment. So you see that there is some activity happening because of contemplating on the advantages and benefits. That kind of excites the mind. So it is becoming like, is like becoming a hindrance. So because of the introspection, you see that happening, and then you apply the antidote. So that's the stage 6. So the difference between the 5th and the 6th is the presence or absence of the danger of subtle laxity and subtle excitation. So now upon up here, so there is no chingwatamu la toksun chimbu kwebas. So at this stage, you don't need to be concerned about subtle laxity. Whereas in the earlier stage, there is this danger. So you have to watch out for the subtle laxity. But here, no longer. Here is more of a, you have to be careful of the subtle excitation. Then we progress to the next level, which is the complete pacification. Number Shiwacheva. So from here, we have, the force of introspection is completed. So there is hardly incidents of arising the laxity and excitation. But still, we need to be careful. We still need to look out, because the person, the practitioner, has not really, uprooted that, not eradicated, even though it does not arise, but it is still there. So we need to watch out for that. So this entails the fine pacification of the occurrence of attachment, melancholy, lethargy, sleepiness, etc. So this is using the force of perseverance. We need to watch out for all this, and then the moment it arrives, we put effort to counter that. So by striving to eliminate even subtle thoughts and secondary afflictions, you do not submit to them, and by so doing, laxity, excitement, etc. are unable to interfere with your concentration, and you achieve continuous concentration. So you are not giving any opportunity for all this excitation or laxity to arise. So this is mainly you applying the force of diligence. So you already have the mindfulness and the introspection fully developed. So with that, on top of these two, you bring in the diligence, the power of perseverance, and then you give no opportunity, no chance to all these obstacles. So because of the power of perseverance, so the moment there is some sign of arising these obstacles, either excitation or laxity, it will apply the appropriate antidote, and it will not give let any of these to arise. So one will be able to continue focusing on the object. So there will be no room given for any obstacles to hinder the continued placement. So the analogy is like here, what happened is like when we are in a battle. So you have already overwhelmed the enemy. You have taken their most of their force. You have even taken their best warriors. So there is only a remnant there. So for them, it's very easy. When they try to do something else, your force will able to overwhelm them, put them down. So we have arrived. The practitioner has arrived at that stage where just a little bit of effort can completely stop all these obstacles from arising. So now the difference, what is the difference between the 6th and 7th is that at the 6th stage, we still have to be fearful, or we still have to be cautious of the danger caused by laxity and excitation. But at this stage, there is no such fear. Because of the force of perseverance, that the moment it arrives, it is able to stop it. So there is no much danger at this stage. And now we arrived at the 8th stage. So 8th stage, so here, even though it is still the force of perseverance, we don't really need to exert that much force. It is like we just need to make at the beginning, we just have to put a little bit of effort to say, okay, I'm going to focus on this, and I will not try to get distracted. So only at the initial, when you begin the meditation, you just need to set your mind, and that is good enough. So you see in the image, so there is the elephant is fully white. So you are free, actually free from the laxity. Free from laxity, both laxity and excitation. But you still need to set up at the beginning, set your kind of motivation at the beginning. This entails exerting effort so that you engage the object of meditation effortlessly, force of perseverance. By striving to eliminate even subtle thoughts and secondary afflictions. So this is same, using the same, it is same as the stage 7. I just copied and paste. So here, even though it says force of perseverance, you don't really need to exert that much force. It's just that you set up your mind before you start the meditation, and that's it. That will last until you conclude your meditation. So the difference between the 7th and the 8th is that at the 7th, there may still arise, there is this danger of laxity and excitation. But even if it arises, the force of the perseverance will stop it. But here, you don't need to worry about that. There is no occasion that it will arise. And then we arrived at the final stage. So final stage is called the balance placement. So here, we don't need to exert any effort. So through the force of acquaintances, we have meditated all that stage. So we have acquainted so well. We have familiarized on this. So you just need to direct your attention, and that's it. With no application and with spontaneity, your mind enters into a flow of concentration. That is without distraction. It is like when we have repeatedly recited a prayer. So when you just start reciting that prayer, no matter what you are doing, you will be still recite that faultlessly. There will be no interruption. I think we all do that. If you are cooking in the kitchen, you can start chanting the 21 praises of Tara, and you can finish it. Even though your mind is not there, but there's no interruption. So this is the stage where you just direct your mind, and that's it. You just sit down to do the meditation, and you are in there. It's a spontaneous, effortless. So at this stage, of course, you can see that there is no monkey. The elephant is fully white. You can remain in meditation for a long time. But the question is, before that, so what is the difference between 8 and 9? The difference is that at the 8, at the beginning, we still need to apply a little bit of effort. We need to set that motivation. We have to generate that mindset. By here, you don't even need to do that. Just sit down and focus, that's it. You will effortlessly, you will be in the meditation. So the question now is, have we achieved Shamatha? At this stage? So the measure of successful cultivation combining, even after we reach the 9th stage, we have not yet achieved calm abiding. In Kamalashila's stages of meditation, when you engage in calm abiding meditation like this, where your body and mind has become pliant and your mind has the power to focus on the meditation object exactly as desired, then you should know that you have accomplished calm abiding. So what we are short of at the stage 9 is that we haven't achieved this pliancy. Our body and mind has not become pliant yet. Because of that, we cannot remain in meditation as long as we wish. Because there is a resistance from our body and mind. Sometimes, remember, we want to do meditation, but there is a resistance. Even from our mind there's resistance. The body, of course, is started to ache. There is a pain, the joint pain, joint ache. So our body is not serviceable. Our mind is not serviceable. We need to achieve that. So in order to achieve calm abiding, the actual calm abiding, we need to achieve two things: pliancy as well as the freedom to stabilize on the object of meditation. We need to have the pliancy, which is the serviceability. Tangna gewe mikwa kunlanju shana yome ri ombushins. So when we achieve pliancy, then yeah, we have control of our mind. We have control of our mind. Our what called the desire, our wish, our body and mind will follow our wish. So now the question is, what is pliancy? So pliancy, these are all from Lamrim Chemo. It is a serviceability of body and mind that has the function of dispelling all hindrances, since it interrupts the continuum of bodily and mental dysfunctions. So at the moment, the reason why we cannot fulfill our wish, why we cannot remain in meditation for hours or days, is that our body and mental does not function. There is this dysfunctionality. So there are hindrances. There are resistance. So pliancy is this serviceability which kind of dispels the dysfunction of our body and mind. So now, how does, after reaching the ninth stage, how do we achieve the actual shamatha? What is the process? So I wanted to read from Lamrim Chemo. I don't want to just say just like that. It is better to read. It's to be safe. So here says, the portent of the occurrence of easily discernible perfected pliancy is this: persons who are striving to cultivate concentration experience a sense of heaviness and numbness of the brain. So after reaching the ninth stage, and then when you continue meditating, what will happen is this will happen. Experience a sense of happiness, the heaviness. A practitioner will experience a sense of heaviness and numbness of the brain. So you will have a sensation in your brain, but it is not an unpleasant heaviness. It's not like having a headache. It's not an unpleasant heaviness. As soon as this occurs, when that kind of a heaviness, as soon as this occurs, they are freed of the mental dysfunction that obstructs their delight in eliminating afflictions and afflictions. So as soon as this happens, they are freed of the mental dysfunction that obstructs the delight in eliminating, that obstructs us from engaging in practices to eliminate afflictions. Mental pliancy, which is the remedy for this dysfunction, arises for the first time. So at that time, we have achieved mental pliancy, physical body pliancy and mental pliancy. We achieved the mental pliancy first. Then, after that, after we achieved the mental pliancy, then due to the power of the arising of the pliancy that makes your mind serviceable an energy that is a cause for physical pliancy courses through your body. After achieving mental pliancy, there is this a rush of energy through our body. Once this energy has pervasively coursed throughout the parts of your body, you are freed of physical dysfunction. That's when we achieve the physical pliancy, which is the remedy for physical dysfunction. Physical dysfunction is we want to sit for meditation for hours, but our body refuses. We will have pain. We cannot put our body according to our wish. But now we can do that. So sometimes I wonder, like Lama Zopa Rinpoche, before COVID, he travels all over the world. He moves from center to center, and most of his teachings are during nighttime. In daytime, he have other appointments. So let's say if he visits a center, one center, and then he will be there for 6-7 days, very hectic schedule. And when the Lama leaves, those who are organizing, they were exhausted, and you take rest. But in Lama Zopa Rinpoche's case, he begins another hectic schedule in another center. And they say that he does not sleep. I think for many years he hasn't really slept with his robes off. So that raises the question. The science says that you need to have at least 6 hours of sleep. And it appears that Lama Zopa is not getting that. But he has so much energy. He can teach for hours and hours. So where is this energy coming from? Is this an indication that he has achieved the pliancy, the shamatha? I don't know. But the evidence points to that, isn't it? We don't need to be Sherlock Holmes to deduce that. I don't know. So anyway, that's what happens. Once this saturates, this we're talking about the physical pliancies, when the once this saturates the entire body, there is an experience of being as if filled with the power of this serviceable energy. Then you will feel that bliss. Thus, when physical pliancy initially occurs, due to the power of energy, there arises a great sense of well-being in your body, and on this basis, there also arises in your mind a most exceptional experience of that pleasure. So when it comes to pliancy, the mental pliancy arises first. When it comes to the bliss, the physical bliss arises first. So it says, therefore, the force of this initial occurrence of pliancy gradually subsides. But this is not the case of pliancy becoming exhausted. Rather, this pliancy is coarse and excessively agitates your mind. So with its disappearance, there occurs a pliancy tenuous like a shadow that is compatible with steady concentration. Once the rapturous delight of your mind has disappeared, your mind stabilizes firmly upon the object of meditation, and you achieve meditative serenity, which is free of the turbulence caused by great delight. So when you achieve the pliancy, so there follows kind of bliss, but that bliss is what do you call yoga, which is unstable, which is like distraction. Of course, there's no distraction. So we need to let that subside. After this bliss subsides, and then when you start to focus, then that plenty kind of goes in the shadow. It is no more in the fore, but its effect, its power is there. That's when one can say, I have achieved shamatha. Oops, I forgot to look at the time. So that's the stages, the 9 stages. So good luck trying, or what do you call, stepping up these stages, climbing up these stages. Okay, thank you. We will stop here. Let's dedicate our merits. Tage jinye zabe jawa de tenda rowa kunla kangben da kebara chizun losan tawai tembe nyingbo ringdo seje sho jambe bayu chedara kemba da kundu sambu tenya dejen deda gunge jesu talob je jawa deda tamje rabdo mo tuzon shebe jawa tamje je ngowa kanla chodo ngakwa de thagi kewe zawan degun Zangpo jeje rabdo ngowar gi. Thank you.